Hello and welcome to the show with me, Gillian Gossel. Today, my guest is Danny Brown-Wolfe, who is the Chief of Staff of Upland Metaverse. Danny, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm so excited.
This is brilliant. So, Danny, I want to talk about of all the people I've interviewed in this space, I've never interviewed someone who's been involved with politics before. This is very interesting. So, tell me, you have a BA in government from Israel, and then tell me about your initial career with the foreign affairs and UN, Labour Party, all that type of stuff. Tell me what you were doing and what you enjoyed about it.
So I always say I had two careers, right? The first one is in foreign policy, and the second one in crypto. But I think the skills are very much transferable. So that's always how I look at it in terms of in progression. But after university, where I specialized specifically in international humanitarian law, which is the law of war and international public law, to like how states come to being and how do you define a state from a legal perspective. I went to work for the Israeli mission at the United Nations, mostly focus on economic development, specifically different projects, for example, with Caribbean nations and South Pacific nations on kind of, now that I look at it and from a tech perspective, it was kind of like understanding product requirements, right? Like speaking to leaders and understanding the data from these countries, understanding what kind of assistance they would need. What are the assets of Israel in terms of technology? Is it water technology? Is it agriculture technology? And then building programs to help those nations create better economies internally. So totally teaching them how to fish rather than aid programs that just give in money. That was very exciting. And I think understanding more the different economic needs and currency needs of different regions in the world was very pivotal for me also in later on in my traveling to the Web3 world. So it was a pretty solid foundation. Similarly, in Israel, when I did as a parliamentary aide in the Labour Party, the MK Arel Margalit, who I worked for, he came from the VC world before going into politics. And being in the opposition, let's just say you fight really hard, but it's very hard to. Similar to Britain, it's very hard to pass laws when you're in the opposition. So he was looking for new ways to really contribute to his constituency in the economic development of Israel, and continued a lot of the work he did as a VC with creating innovation centers in the periphery of Israel. So going into the far north or the far south, which is the desert, and trying to understand, okay, what are your natural ecosystem assets, and how do we turn those assets then into an innovation hub based on those assets? So that was very exciting work, and that was in parallel, of course, to the parliamentary work of the different finance committees that you see how governments really operate and how money is being passed around to different budgets based on what. So super interesting, and specifically in Israel, which I'm sure in a lot of spaces it's like that, the absolute lack of transparency, not only towards the public, but even towards other members of parliament who, I can't even tell you, we got facts, like 100 pages of facts for budget transfers a night before the budget transfer were supposed to be voted on. So you don't even have, the PDF for a Control F, let alone any transparency to the public for even after it was those sums were passed.
I can so see why you made your way into crypto, Web3, and the metaverse. You have all elements of it because you're working at the macro level, which is really interesting, and all the finances. But also to touch briefly before I go on to the Web3, you're also involved, which I think is fascinating too, as well, in conflict resolution between Palestine and Israel. And that must have been a very fascinating period for you as well, because it's on your borders, it's part of your country's makeup, if you like, your most recent history.
Definitely. So there aren't a lot of things as a private citizen you can do to improve the macro policies in terms of peace resolution. But as someone who does economic development, I worked with a very interesting firm that did capacity building for Palestinian high tech. So they actually for years took the Israeli know-how of the startup nation and did courses for up and coming engineers and high-tech leaders in Ramallah, in different Palestinian cities, giving them that knowledge so they can develop their own startup ecosystem. And I helped write grants. We got a USAID grant and an EU grant for these efforts, as well as not only just capacity building for Palestinian companies, but also working on conflict resolution through joint high-tech initiatives. So one of the grants that we got from the EU was actually for taking women engineers who are Israelis and Palestinians and doing a joint course for them to how to really grow inside a company, how to become, from an engineer to a manager, to a VP R&D, and giving them that knowledge. But the conflict resolution part was just by working together on a certain goal. So you're a Palestinian woman from Ramallah, together with a Israeli woman from Tel Aviv. Your worlds are very different. Your communities are in a state of conflict for the past 55 years, but you came together because you're both in high tech and you both want the skills to become a high tech manager. So you're not talking about the conflict. You're really focused on this professional development. But of course, seeing someone in that way, you all of a sudden don't see them in the framework of the conflict alone, and you have friendships and you see the people differently. And that's part of the effect that really puts waves, because and we were able to actually measure then, okay, what are the next circles that this affect? Because that Palestinian woman finishing that course, making friends in Israel, right? But in a total professional manner, goes out to her family, and then, on a family dinner, talks about her new Israeli colleague that she had a course with, and seeing her in a different light, and seeing Israelis in a different light. And now her family and her other colleagues from her company are now exposed to her experience. And that was this theory
Very
of change that we had.
Do you know, a lot of that was done in Northern Ireland, again, because you had the two communities divided by religion in this case. And I've seen programs on reconciliation, and of course it's happened in South Africa, but it's this, when you see somebody as a person, you have a joint goal, it makes perfect sense. Oh, very exciting. So now all this stuff you're doing, there was no way you could avoid a career in Web3. No way. So when did you first hear about blockchain and crypto?
So it was actually in the context of the United Nations. So I had spent a few years in Israel, and then we moved back to the US as a family. And while waiting for my green card, I started reading, okay, what is the UN up to, catching up on different initiatives that were happening, thinking about what do I really want to invest my next few years in. And at the time, this was very early 2016, very early days of Ethereum, the UN Food Program actually and Refugee Agency actually both worked on a POC on Ethereum, doing supply chain management transparent on the blockchain, to be able to see where does aid that went to Syrian refugees in northern Jordan, tracking, from the moment that a certain country commits to a certain amount of money to feed those refugees throughout the supply chain, up to the moment where the refugee actually gets the aid. So it went all the way. They combined it with a biometric retina scan.
Was that named iPay? Is that so someone from a camp who didn't have any documentation could pay for their groceries using biometrics?
So this was this was not they simulated pay because it wasn't actual pay, right? This basically was your the way to see that that person got this ration, which is
Yeah.
something that, being at the UN before then, this is a problem they've been working on for years. How do you have the transparency? How do you make sure even at the end point, okay, the aid got to that refugee camp, but how do you know it was equally distributed between everyone? And all of a sudden I'm like, so I don't understand, what is this magical magical technology that allows this transparency, that allows this documentation, that is open, reading about the different characteristics of it. I was just going down a crazy rabbit hole. I had a good friend who was she's the first female VC firm in Israel, who came to New York to give a lecture about Ethereum. She had invested in the ICO. Very innovative, Shelly Hod Moyal from iAngels, and she's like, okay, come to my lecture. I'm explaining about Ethereum, and I'm sitting there, and my head is, there's probably smoke coming out of it, because she's giving a deeper dive into the. Until then, I'd read about blockchain as a technology more for transparency and immutability, and all of a sudden, Shelley is speaking about the tokenomics aspect. And I'm thinking in the back of my head while she's talking, and of course I understood like 10% of what she was talking about at the time, but I already started running in my head all the social impact use cases that can be done with tokenomics, and then reading deeper into Bitcoin and seeing it as a dissident technology, if nothing else, just the option for people where the government tries to control all aspects of their financial life and controls the population through that, giving them a way out. And being Jewish and having a family who escaped the Nazis in the 1930s and 1940s, that a lot of these people who run away, they're like, okay, if you can leave, you're leaving all your possessions behind. And the different, and this is not something that's not relevant today. You have countries like Venezuela and Turkey with hyperinflation, where the government is saying, no, you cannot convert your liras into dollars, and no, you cannot take dollars out of the country. So you're working hard and your money is being completely eroded, and the government is not letting you keep the value of your hard-earned money and assets. And Bitcoin solves for this, because you don't need the permission of the government to move money around. And that really hurt both a personal historic note, but also from the understanding of, not all governments can be trusted with monetary policy. And at the end of the day, it's the common people who pay the price for it.
Yeah. So now you have, oh my goodness, so you have the financial imperative. You understand the whole concept of decentralized money and ownership of money. And you also have the experience of helping countries look at their digital assets and how to make them work. So was it natural? Do you think you were always going to work for a metaverse? And how did Upland come onto your view?
Yeah, so I was actually working for a few years for an Israeli layer 2 company called Orbs, which was very exciting for me from a personal professional development, and not only interest, because I had a few roles there and they were all very dynamic. So the Orbs is a second layer to Ethereum. So deeply understanding the constraints Ethereum had in terms of usability and speed for developers. And personally there, I did everything from being head of marketing to doing product and working with developing different use cases, doing business development both in the US and around the world, both for the token ecosystem, So understanding, Web3 communities and working with the end user, which is the token holder, and the staking incentives and mechanisms, working with the validators, who are like the miners or block explorers in this case, in other cases, and also working with actual enterprises around the US who at the time we're talking 2018 to 2021, were sort of diving in with POCs to that technology. And Orbs was the way we architected it was really solving their problem of being kind of like a hybrid blockchain, because you probably remember the big thing was private blockchains at the time. You have like Hyperledger, and you had all the IBMs of the world pushing their private blockchain. But it was so a lot of these enterprises were starting to get educated on the benefits of blockchains, but not necessarily on the benefit of public blockchains. But they were still not ready to full, deep take the dive right into a public blockchain. And this hybrid model that allowed them to slowly decentralize as opposed to do a decentralization from day one was very attractive to them. So working with large enterprises and understanding their problems and how they think blockchain might be able to solve it, designing those products with them was such an immense experience for me in my personal development, because I had never done product before. I came from policy. I did policy products for governments, and of course the marketing aspects. But I think the most exciting thing for me in working in Orbs was also that they had a social impact foundation called Hexa Foundation, where we, free of charge, sort of like pro bono, worked with NGOs and governments on social impact use cases that are relevant for blockchain.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty interesting. So then how did the move to Upland? How did that come about? And the metaverse, because Upland had termed itself a metaverse. It's the Upland.me back in 2018, whatever. But no one else was using those terms. Did you know it was a metaverse when you joined them?
So I knew exactly what it was. And I was poached. I was poached. They sent a few headhunters after me, and she didn't say who it was, but she was describing, it's a metaverse, it's a B2C, and I'm like, lady, I do B2B. Like, I don't know what, I'm not the right person for you. It's like, I don't know this B2C stuff. I don't really do metaverse. I do like hardcore blockchain infrastructure. I'm not sure I'm the right person for you guys. And they were relentless. They're like, meet with Edan and Dirk, sit with them, and you'll get it. So I came very skeptical, because I didn't come from the gaming world. The metaverse was sort of like framed as more of like a gaming and experiences. But when I sat and spoke to Edan and Dirk, both on what they built, how they build it, and their future vision, I realized that Upland is an economic platform. It's not a game. It maybe start as a game. It has gamification aspects to it, but the real value proposition here is the economy that was built so thoughtfully and responsibly, and also the future development with the ability to have UGC and creators from all around the world selling their products, a platform for brands to be able to connect better with their users and their customers, a social layer for interaction. Basically, a lot of the things that Meta was for us millennials growing up and has now faded away is all of a sudden now manifested in a new layer of more immersive internet. But that still is relevant for everyone today, because it's on your mobile phone, as opposed to a future headset that's going to be relevant eventually, but not today.
Yeah. Everybody has the phone. You're right. The headsets, those ones on handsets, what are they, 3,500, the Apple headsets? That's a bit
I mean,
pricey.
they're showing the path. For me, I've been on a lot of panels where Meta's VR metaverse was raised as a question, and I said, listen, I believe in meeting users where they are today to start building, and having an open architecture that would allow you to evolve into the VR space when that is pervasive and common. I also would say, and this is funny to say it and looking at it now, but I also always said VR is only going to happen when Apple does VR because
And you predicted it.
because just it's Apple. When they do something, they do it right. They do it with a very strong vision, and they do it in a way that allows for a lot of smaller developers to then go wild. I mean, all the apps we use today were possible because of the infrastructure of the App Store and what our smartphone allowed for us to do. And it was it was a 10-year boom of the economy and innovation and high tech. I do believe the headset of Apple, it will eventually go to a lower point, probably in the next versions, but it paves the way for this new app store with new possibilities.
Yeah, I suppose the original Apple phone was very expensive. Original Apple Watch was very expensive, and now we've Androids and cheaper Apple ones.
Yeah,
so
that's.
I mean, it does make sense. So I love the fact that you're saying Upland is mobile first, and that's very important because that's what the world uses. I mean, I'm a bit old fashioned. I use a laptop a lot, but mobile is the rest of the world. How important is community in Upland?
The most important. It's the number one thing. It's what leads us, grows us, always in the back of our mind with every decision that we make. A big part of it is us being Web3. Then we need to keep in mind all the time what the community will say, and that transparency to the community is something that is baked in. So anything that we do, they see on chain before we even announce it. They've created, a lot of our community members, to serve other community members, have created analytics services that abstract the data directly from the blockchain. Completely, they don't need us to announce things. They will. I mean, it's nice when we announce it because it gives maybe the rationale of why we did something or what our future vision for it, but they see it. So that's one aspect of the community. But Upland has developed organically to actually be a community hub for different communities. So it can be expat communities, like our Brazilian player community decided to, before Rio was launched, do a takeover of a neighborhood in Queens, and they created their own community there. They decide together on what they're going to build there, what the future of their neighborhood's going to look like. They're doing the same in Upland's Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. The communities are bringing to us a lot of partners and are amplifying everything that we're doing. So if I give you an example of car racing, so Upland has developed a functionality for car NFTs, which both will have utility in the Upland metaverse that would allow people to travel in their NFT cars between cities, and also you can race your car, which is something that we launched about 6 months ago, a racing app. Of course, because of our open architecture, any developer who wants to create a racing game can connect to Upland, and through our APIs read the user and the NFT data, and have the users actually use their real metaverse cars in the second layer app. That's exciting. But going back to the community example, so we created this feature, which we think is really cool, and we have a whole plan of how we're going to do it. And then the community organically decided to create a racing league and have the different nodes, the different localities and communities form each a team and race each other. And so, okay, we created a leaderboard for them because we saw that this is something that they like to do. So we know that we can create utility and functionality, but our community will always take it 5 steps ahead of us, and we have to catch up.
I think that's the nice thing, isn't it? So you have a platform, but it's open. You got APIs, so you bring in cars and people come in racing. So I'm sure they'll come up with some other stuff to do with cars as well. I say teams or events or Formula One, whatever. I'm sure it'll grow. And well, what other games are being built in Upland? What other things? That's a great example. Are there other examples where you've given a platform or a feature and all
Yeah.
of a sudden they've run
So
with it?
one very exciting game that we announced, they've been working on it for a while, but the formal announcement was this week, so it's pretty fresh. Is a great example. It's the XNFT. So the XNFT is actually players of Upland, users of Upland who know Upland very well, and joined forces with game developers to develop a game in Upland that's a shooting game. So it's starting out as a shooting range that also teaches you about gun safety, and they have different partnership, and it will evolve. So they built a meta fort in Upland in Texas, and that's really where users can come in and then play their game. We have other games that are really heavily integrated into Upland, like Upland Castles. Really, the community has been amazing in creating different games and experiences based on the functionality that Upland already has. But we're also working with even Web 2 and other Web 3 games and experiences. Because of our open APIs, we're agnostic to what kind of technology you use to build your world, right? So anyone can connect to us. And for the Web 2, I don't want to say only gaming studios, but gaming studios, and I would say different experiences, it's very interesting for them to work with Upland because they can dip their toes into NFTs, but without having to deal with the smart contracts, with doing having a full blown blockchain team. They can connect their experience to their game to Upland, and then create NFTs in Upland that are contextual to Upland, whether it's map assets that can be a reward for leveling up in their game, or a structural ornament that would signify something, a level, or you just maybe even just use their IP in the game. Of course, wearables are that we just announced. So we have a partnership with Ready Player Me, where our Upland users create their own Ready Player Me avatar. It's part of their Upland identity. And now we've worked with Ready Player Me to allow for wearable NFTs that these avatars can carry on from one experiences to another. So that also opens up in first working with partners on those wearable NFTs, but also in the future, of course, UGC.
Perfect. So actually, could bring up the next question. So for users of the site who are generating the content, tell me a bit about the earning potential and the metaverse venture. So it's not just playing or hanging out. There's actually a commercial, economic.
Users are opening businesses, so there are different business models and types of businesses in Upland. Meta ventures are we don't have a centralized what's called blanking. We don't have a centralized marketplace for secondary transactions. We allow users to have their own shops that are specialized, that sell secondary sales in Upland, or primary sales if they're UGC. So we have, let's say, a partnership with FIFA and a partnership with the NFLPA. So users can have NFLPA NFT shops in Upland that they manage, but they can also create their own NFTs if you're an artist or a 3D creator and you want to open a line of outdoor decor for your metaverse house. Then you can create those NFTs in an Upland metaventure factory and then sell them in your showroom directly to other
And
players.
who owns the factory?
The users.
Yeah. That's so cool. So you got people in many. So you're not only replicating the world, you're replicating a lot of the industries and businesses of the world in Upland.
We're rebuilding the world, but a lot of the economics have similarities. It opens more opportunities for new business models with every feature that we have. So with the cars, you can have car racing. You can, as a game developer, if you develop a car racing game, you can decide, do you charge people to play the game, or maybe you have a pool of prizes and that's how you make money. Maybe you will have advertisement in your game and it will be free. We don't dictate what the business model of users who create businesses of Upland would be. We offer and give possibilities. Also with cafes, we see cafes as not only the future of socialization, but also for a content creator economy to emerge. Because think of a lot of the platforms that creators have today, not a lot of them are monetizable, right? Like you create a Twitter space, you have really good content, but you don't necessarily monetize on that. But if you have a cafe, or you're being hosted at a cafe in Upland for your content, you can decide, is it NFT gated? Like, do you have to have my NFT in order to attend this event or lecture? Maybe you pay a one-time fee to attend this lecture, or maybe there's a tipping jar.
That's clever. I love that. But tell me, in terms of this, what are the major sort of milestones coming on the roadmap, coming down the track? So you're building all these features the whole time. Users are also then creating stuff themselves and feeding it back to you. Are there any sort of big hype points that are happening, or is it just the land that's being released and the cities that have been launched, or what are the high points going forward?
Ooh, I feel like everything is happening in parallel because we're a platform. We're working on a lot of verticals. We have our Genesis week this weekend where we recap everything we've done for the past year. And I just looked at the video that we've prepared. We're like, wow. A lot has been done and a lot is planned for the following year. So I think we look at it in verticals, right? So we have partnership with brands that are always exciting because they create more content in Upland. And then from the feature, we have a vertical of social, so it can be our in app chat that is now launched, and then we expand on it. So we launched the in-app chat, for example, for our official channels. So migrating a lot of the Discord chatter into in-app, and now we're slowly opening this feature. Now that we tested, we see it works, we see it's popular. We're now opening it up to more community managed channels. So every one of those communities we talked about before, like nodes, you can have a neighborhood chat.
Yeah.
In Upland.
And it's nice being actually in Upland in the app. You don't have to leave the app to go to Discord or something to have a chat with people that you're actually mixing with.
Exactly, and it has moderation tools, etc. Same with the cafes. We're opening first Upland cafes. We're experimenting, showing users what we can do with those cafes, what type of events we can host in them, and then we will open it up to a metaventure. You can have a metaventure cafe. You could be a cafe owner, and then you as a cafe owner can now both decide how to monetize on cafe, but also create different content. Maybe it's unique content, maybe it's like a niche content, but expanding on this social and social layer, which is which was the purpose of cafes, right? anything in mobility. So as I said, we're going to have utility, more and more utility for the cars, as we do for every NFT that we have. And we're going to have just creating more of the layering on more features in the racing capabilities. Having users neighborhood racing tracks. So there's a lot of things going on. I would say that another focus for us this year is also local culture in the virtual localities that we have. So one of the big successes we've had this year was partnering in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil with the Mangueira Samba School, which is really a pivotal moment for us in how we approach localization of these different experiences, and how do we take the real life local culture and help it come into the metaverse and get everyone in the world excited about it, but in that locality. So obviously the Samba School and the Carnival in Brazil is a very big deal locally. And you're going to be seeing a lot more of that in Upland, in different cities that have already launched and different cities that we're going to launch in the next year, that they're going to be connected with partnerships that very much represent the local culture.
I think you got it in the head there. And also because Upland is a representation of the real world anyway, so culture is going to be the thing that carries it through. If people want to start off their journey in Upland, where do they go and what do they do?
Yeah, they download the app. We now have also just released, fresh off the dev shop, a mission center, and that allows users to new users to have more like better tutorials of onboarding and start doing missions in Upland in order to upgrade their status, and on the way learn how to use Upland and the different features.
And that's just upland.me. In the
That's
App
right.
Store.
Upland.me, and then you can either download the app in the Google Store, or iPhone App Store, Apple App Store, or play on your desktop.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Exciting times, from building real worlds to building real worlds online. It makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for your time today, Danny.
Thank you so much.